Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this edition of our Farm Quick Combos. As a recap, these quick combos are about 30 minutes each. They're recorded Zooms and streamed on our Facebook page, and we're covering all of the program areas and other initiatives that we focus on within the farm program. Our targeted audience is dairy farmers themselves, and really an opportunity to interact and ask questions of the farm team. After this webinar or this quick convo, it will be recorded and posted on our Facebook page as well as on our farm program website, so that if you want to reference folks to it, or additionally we can add additional resources and information related to the topic that we're discussing in the current quick conversation. So with that, today's topic is animal care. And before we get started and before I let Emily introduce herself, just as a reminder, a priority of these is to interact and ask questions. So we encourage you, if you have questions, to submit those a variety of different ways. If you're listening in on Zoom, you can enter those questions either the chat feature or the Q&A feature. If you hover over with your mouse at the bottom of your screen, or on your mobile device, you'll see those icons pop up and you can submit your questions in there. Additionally, if you're listening in on the Facebook side, you can just pop that into the comments, and when we get to the end of our conversation, we'll be sure to ask those at that point. So with that, I'll turn it over to Emily to introduce herself.
Thanks, Beth. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Yeiser Stepp, for those we haven't interacted with before, and I am the Vice President of the National Dairy Farm Program. Been in this role for almost 4.5, going on 5 years now, and have grown up in the dairy industry my entire life. And after going to Penn State and Virginia Tech for degrees in dairy and animal science, pursued careers in the dairy industry, in the genetics field, as well as in the nonprofit arena in Pennsylvania before coming here to National Milk Producers Federation. So it's great to have everybody with us here this afternoon, and looking forward to sharing a little bit more insights onto the animal care component of the farm program itself, and hopefully we can get some of your questions answered.
Thanks, Emily. So I guess right off the bat, the big question, the kind of to lay it all out there, can you just give us a summary of what farm animal care is?
I think it's a great, an often asked question. What do we do? And certainly in elevator conversations, we have our elevator pitch that we get to share with anybody and everybody about what the farm program does and doesn't do. And I think at the core level, our mission and our vision of the program is to provide the assurances to our dairy customers, so those dairy buyers throughout the supply chain, as well as our dairy consumers, that they can have faith and trust that their milk and their dairy products come from a good place. And how we do that is through a mechanism of data collection, a trust but verify type of system, where we really do want to help to tell dairy's positive story. We know that our farmers are doing the right thing, and certainly the landscape of how we communicate to our customers and our consumers has evolved and changed. I mean, it's changing minute to minute, it feels like, as to how we can best provide that radical transparency in our food supply to those end users. And so by doing that, the animal care program really does create a framework and a foundation for our on-farm animal care. We don't replace supervision and management. We don't dictate specifics around what a farm must do. We utilize that culture of continuous improvement, of identifying scientifically based standards that demonstrate good animal care that we can evaluate farms against. And if a farm, and certainly to celebrate what we are doing well on our dairy farms across the country, but also if there are areas for improvement identified, identifying ways of moving that needle for creating that culture of continuous improvement. I think we acknowledge that the program in and of itself is simply a snapshot in time. When we do use our network of our cooperatives and our processor evaluators to gather this data about our on-farm practices, it is a snapshot in time. And certainly day to day, we do rely on our dairy producers and their management teams to ensure that that on-farm culture is practiced in a day-to-day manner. It does obviously require everybody, not just our farmers, but everybody throughout the supply chain to make sure that that culture is created. Everybody from our third shift milker to the CEOs of our largest dairy companies and everybody in between. This is really a task that we need to continue to undertake to convey and provide those assurances in our supply chain. I think most importantly, though, is that we are a science-based program. We are an outcomes-based program, and we rely on science and outcomes-based to drive that continuous improvement throughout the industry. There's certainly a lot of interest in some marketing fads or niche areas that certainly have gained some traction over the years, but the importance of the farm program is that we don't establish standards for animal care that are not scientifically justified or outcomes-based. This is a program encompasses close to 99% of the fluid milk supply in the United States. And so it's really important for our program to be able to address the diversity, the vast diversity that we have within the industry. And it's something, again, that should be celebrated and we should feel very proud of, that we've got really every size, shape, and dimension of a dairy farm, but that also really implores upon us as a program to make sure that we are maintain facility and size neutrality, that our standards can be utilized on a 20 cow farm in Southeast Pennsylvania to a 20,000 cow dairy in Western Idaho, and really everybody in between. And so it's an opportunity, it's a challenge, but I think we have continued to strive to make sure that we make a meaningful program that provides those assurances, but also continues to make sure that we keep in line with science and research in the animal care and animal welfare space. And I think on the flip side, something from a level set standpoint is that it's not always going to eliminate challenges at the farm level or throughout the supply chain. We hopefully are chipping away at those threats to consumer trust, but it will never fully eliminate those threats to consumer trust in the dairy space. But what it will do is hopefully, again, inspire that culture of continuous improvement and, again, work as another method of communicating dairy's good story to our customers and our consumers.
Thanks. You know, we can do this program as an industry, we can participate, we can adhere to these standards, but really, you know, the question comes back to what difference does it make? You know, we don't need to pat ourselves on the back. How do we know we're finding value down the supply chain from our customers and consumers? Do we know that they care? Do we know that it matters to them that we have a program like this?
I think all signs, all research indicates that it does. And the slide that we've shared here is certainly something where our relationship with Dairy Checkoff, with the Dairy Management Incorporated organization, is critical. We have a customer outreach team that engages and identifies the top 25 and now the top 50 really movers and shakers in the dairy space from a brand, retail, consumer product goods type of entity. And in doing that, we have recognized just in the last few years that close to 80% of those top 25 dairy customers do formally support the farm animal care program. I think in the origination of the program itself in 2009, maybe some of these brands that you see on the slide here were considering making their own programs because we as an industry weren't as proactive as we could have been compared to some of our other barnyard groups. And these companies, other companies, were getting asked the question of how are your dairy farmers, your dairy farm suppliers caring for the animals? They wanted answers, they needed answers to communicate that down to their consuming public. And so by having the farm program in place, we've really been thrilled with the support of those top 25 customers. Obviously, 78% isn't 100%, but the work of the DMI and the collective checkoff teams and state and regions have been integral into making sure that there is that awareness that we do have a program that addresses animal care as a whole, and that they can formally support that throughout their supply chains of having those expectations of the program itself. And so that support looks a variety of different ways. It's, you know, through supplier requirements or CSR or the social responsibility reports, websites, or direct conversations and engagement with those customers. And if you're, you know, if you're a farmer joining us on the call, I would challenge that, ask your co-op or your processor that you ship to as to who on this slide deck and a variety of other customers that you know are dairy purchasers, do they support the farm program, and find out where your milk's going, because I think sometimes there's that disconnect of, well, I don't know exactly where it ends up. And that's where as a whole, as a comprehensive program, we can really feel strongly and support that, hey, you know, these customers are thanking us for participating and having a unified animal care program like the farm program that they can support and get behind.
Yeah, and I think that it you know, oftentimes we feel as though the pressures of this group of logos, as well as other dairy customers and suppliers and consumers, are dictating and making decisions about what we're doing in our management practices on the farm. So can you speak a little bit about exactly how decisions and standards are made, expectations for the farm program are decided upon?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and certainly I think we shared in our previous quick convos that typically this is the most commonly asked question as to who are the farmers involved, who gets to make the decisions. And I think what makes the farm program unique is that we do have a very robust structure of governance that involves farmers across the board. If you just focus in on the center part of the slide here on your screen, we instituted a farmer advisory council about going on 3 years ago now by way of recommendations of a research survey that we partnered with Colorado State on about the program itself, about producer perceptions and how we could further engage the farmer community in this governance process. So you'll see there the Farmer Advisory Council, in addition to our task force levels, have a significant amount. I mean, the Farmer Advisory Council is 100% farms. And those folks really provide that guidance, the input, and the ambassadorship, but also keep our program rooted in reality to make sure that we are providing value back to the farm itself within this program as well. Then, you know, the Farmer Advisory Council has 20 representatives on it. The task force has a total of now about 20 once it's all said and done. And if you're interested as to who those folks are that you could reach out to, there on the left side of your screen are the members of the Farmer Advisory Council and our Animal Care Task Force. That Animal Care Task Force, we did have some open seats over the last year that we have solicited for nominations, and that task force will then be presented to the National Milk Producers Federation Animal Health and Wellbeing Committee. So that committee is really where things transfer from kind of farm program itself to the National Milk Producers Federation leadership and governance. As you can see on that previous slide, there was about 60% now farmer representation on that Animal Health and Wellbeing Committee. And then finally, any and all decisions and revisions to this process do go in front of the National Milk Producers Federation board. And so the board of directors is a 54-member board, of which now about 65% of those folks are farmers as well. If you're interested as to who is on the National Milk Board, as well as who are the appointees to the Animal Health and Wellbeing Committee, please feel free to reach out to any of these individuals here on your screen from the Farmer Advisory Council or Animal Care Task Force, but also reach out to those members if you are a part of our National Milk Co-op leaders or membership. Reach out to those leaders and they can get you in touch with those right people. So, you know, it has been an evolution. I think we are unique in that in any of the animal care or welfare programs that are available within the dairy space, we are the only one, to our knowledge, that actively involves the farmer and the producer community in such a robust manner. And I think that really allows for us to maintain a pulse on the industry, know where our pressure points are, what we want to address from those assurances, but also not go too far, too fast, and certainly continue to function in that mantra of continuous improvement over time.
So Emily, obviously these are leadership roles. They're very involved. Well, in 2020, there are a lot of Zoom and telephone calls, prior to that. And in the future, it's a lot of face-to-face and a lot of nitty-gritty, working and looking through research and discussions there. But beyond these leadership positions, as a dairy farmer and any dairy farmer who's participating in the program, how can they be involved in understanding and impacting how standards are developed and what's going on at their co-op level or even at a program-wide level?
Yeah, I think at the easiest entry point is get to know who your leadership is within your co-ops and your processors. Those individuals should very well know the information that we're sharing here. Also, become familiar with who your farm program evaluator is. Those are your first line of information around the program itself. They are the ones that have been trained in the program standards. We do require that they recertify. We have monthly engagement opportunities with them to make sure that we're keeping them up to date, and vice versa. And so really, between kind of all of those different networks of individuals, make sure you know who those folks are. And at the very least, again, we've shared in our previous quick convos, but we are a small team on the farm program, but what that allows for us to do is really, hopefully, be nimble and open to direct feedback. So at the end of this quick conversation, Bev will share the multiple ways of doing outreach to us directly. But the easiest way is the dairyfarm@nmpf.org. Also, you can call the NMPF office, and that will go through to us if it's a farm program question. I think, the majority of us on the farm team now come from production ag backgrounds, and the majority of us also come from production dairy backgrounds. And so, I think first and foremost, we enjoy talking directly to farmers. We want to hear your feedback. We are open to that, and certainly can hopefully, learn from each other. We are far from perfect in this program. We recognize that we want to make sure that feedback is heard and implemented, and also, executing upon those collective goals that we want to keep people in the dairy aisle in their grocery stores and give them the trust and faith in the products that they're purchasing, in doing that through our demonstrated excellence in animal care.
Thanks, and I would certainly add in, the farmers that are listed on the slide now, they represent a diversity across the board, whether it's geographically, what breeds they're milking, what type of parlor they're milking in, herd size, who they're shipping their milk to, who they're marketing their milk to. But we know after they get through with their day jobs and they participate in this leadership, they may have missed something, and regardless of that, we want the opinions of all folks. And so before our standards are finalized and before they're approved by our farmer-led National Milk Board, we do open up all of our draft standards for each version every 3 years to an open comment period. And so during that time, previously in version 3 or 4 that we just recently approved at last year in 2019, we had it opened up for open comments on our website. So it was open to the world, so not just dairy farmers, but everyone from veterinarians to researchers, dairy customers, consumers were able to provide comments, and that was something that we appreciated because it maybe identified a few points that we haven't thought about, or clarified that we were going the right direction on some other points, and so we were able to encompass that feedback before our standards were finalized as well. So with that, Emily, can you speak a little bit about exactly what the expectations are for a dairy producer that is participating within the animal care program?
Yeah, so I think over the history of the program, some of these expectations maybe have been felt like they haven't been as clear or as transparent as we're hopefully making them now. I think as Bev and I started formally with this program about 4.5 years ago, there was a lot that kind of felt like it was in the dark of night, and we really wanted to bolster our communications efforts within the industry to make sure that those expectations, you know, are fully out there for everybody to know. You know, I think at a base level, the farmer expectations are to continue to do what we know you're doing already. Continue to take care of your cows, to take care of your farm in the way that you know is best, that works within our farm animal care program standards. We're not asking for adherence to all the standards right out of the gate, and that's why this is a program around continuous improvement. We do anticipate, because of that science and outcomes-based approach, that, you know, regardless of the management style that you utilize to manage your operations as a farm, most of those standards will be able to be achieved. And if they're not, that at the time of an evaluation, we do have that structure to work not only with your evaluators, but also the collective management team that you have around your farms, your vets, your nutritionists, your hoof trimmers, et cetera, to make sure that everybody's on the same page of where the improvements may need to be made. So where we have this adherence to the farm program standards, that certainly sounds a little aggressive, but at the core level, it's to be aware of what the standards are, and that's a lot of the onus that we have as the farm program, is to make sure that everybody is aware of what the standards are, how they can be achieved, and if you're interested in kind of doing a deeper dive, feel free to reach out to us on any of those standards that you may have questions about. But also our animal care reference manual is a key component of communicating, you know, a variety of ways that some of those standards can be achieved. During an evaluation, we do as a program require at minimum that a farm be evaluated once every 3 years, or at least once within a current program cycle. We are on version 4 of the program cycle, and when an evaluator comes to your dairy, there is the ask of a signature on a pledge of participation form, acknowledging that you understand what the second party evaluation goals are, what they're there for, and understanding those standards and the verification process that it entails. Obviously, also a key component of the program is also, you know, documentation, and making sure that anything from a VCPR to protocols are available for review to the evaluator. This is to ensure that consistency, and also give the evaluator some insights as to on-farm practices that then can be, during a verification or an evaluation, can be verified that they are being put in place as intended. And so that's, you know, that's a farmer expectation as well. Obviously, assisting an evaluator, or if you have a verification conducted to help the evaluator along the way. We really don't want this to be a you versus them versus you type of approach. This really is a collective work together. And we hope that over time, your evaluators can become one of those key trusted advisors, like a vet, like your nutritionist, like any of those other management team members that really play an integral role in you know, addressing your goals for your farm. And then obviously, if there are areas identified for improvement on the farm, you know, working with your evaluator to identify the most reasonable within our framework, the reasonable timeframes for those to be addressed. Some co-ops and processors do admittedly have stricter, shorter timeframes for getting some of those standards to be in place. And so be sure to communicate and ask your evaluator or your co-op or processor leadership as to what maybe our framework, any adaptations on the stricter side of the framework that the farm program has generated may require for your specific supply chain. But anything else to add there, Bev? I'm probably missing something.
No, the only thing, you spoke a little bit about the standards, and so probably some questions if folks are not familiar with the standards already are, well, what are the standards? So if you want to go over a little bit about what the standards are within the current version of FARM.
Yeah, so again, very high level, and if you have further questions about this, please reach out to us. You know, I think we continually get the question around or a key area of interest in the last version of the program was around tail docking. That ban continues to be in place, and that is still maintains a priority level there. As Bev and I were talking before we jumped on here, actually had a heifer calf born this morning out of one of our herd that we maintain, and thankfully our great friends in Maryland milk our cows at the moment for us. But it's really it's one of those things where there's no longer the science or the research to justify tail docking, and that is a practice that has been phased out and continues to be that ceasing of that practice is continuing to be a priority area for version 4 of the animal care program. Additionally, I think over time, since version 1, right out of the gate, the themes of our priority areas have maintained relatively the same themes. We want to ensure that our farms have a strong relationship with their veterinarians, utilizing that expertise in the vet community to develop herd health plans for proactive animal health and care, making sure that we are caring for, I would say, our most vulnerable or at-risk demographics on the farm, so our pre-wean calves, our non-ambulatory animals, euthanasia, and ensuring that when the decision is made to put a cow move from dairy production to beef production, that animal is fit to do so. Additionally, the bare minimums around feed and water access, and also that continuing education or training for both family and non-family employees as a critical component. I think we can't do a lot of things without making sure that our employees, both family and non-family, have the same understanding around the expectations for excellence in animal care. Again, then also we focus on those outcomes-based measures. We want to let the cows tell us what their welfare is. And we do that through those animal observations of scoring body condition, hock and knees, locomotion, and broken tails. We do also score hygiene, but at this point there's not we've rolled out a new scoring system for hygiene that frankly is more practical. And in this version cycle, we want to make sure that scoring system works as intended, and then we can reestablish what the right benchmark is. Additionally, and this will get into some of the conversation later, but the focus on pain management around for disbudding, as well as treatment records to make sure we're in compliance with the expectations of the FDA, and to make sure that we're both producing a quality milk product and a quality beef product when that transition happens from dairy to beef.
So the one thing I would add, not specifically about the standards, but I know that was a lot of information to share. So if there are producers that have questions or want to see this written out, I'd encourage you to go to our website. We do have an animal care evaluation prep guide that outlines this in more detail that you can use as a checklist. And just as a reminder, your farm animal care evaluator exists to in their role to assist where needed. Please don't feel like you have to jot all this down or retain all this information completely right now. So probably the biggest out of the top 5 questions we get is what's next? You know, how do we, what's coming down the pike next? What does version 5 look like? What's the next thing that's going to go away, and why? So Emily, do you think you can share just a few of our emerging issues in the animal care space?
Yeah, so this is not a slide that is indicative of anything that the farm program is going to do, but the importance of having that customer outreach team on the Dairy Management Inc. side is to understand where are those pressure points coming, where are the questions coming from those dairy customers. And in particular is in this arena, particularly kind of overarching on calf care and the importance of pain management. As you saw, we have that standard around using pain management for disbudding. Frankly, a lot of the activist attention over the past few years has been a significant push on the use of polled genetics. And while that is admirable, there obviously are scientific and research limitations that indicate to us as the dairy industry, while that's a great long-term goal, there are some barriers to getting that done. So what we've kind of in that space around disbudding and that overall pressure of how do we reduce the amount of pain that a calf or an animal has to endure for some of those practices that are necessary to protect both the animal and the human handling. That's where the pain management piece came in. And that, again, there are things that the farm program, because of the science and the research justification, i.e. tail docking, i.e. pain management, that we can encourage within our standards. Some of the more market-based approaches, again, as I mentioned, some of those more niche things, the things that maybe are less science-based, those are areas that end up being B2B conversations and discussions with a supplier and the customer itself. So there will be items as an example, GMOs, BST, you won't see anything about that in the farm program because both of those practices, both of those technologies are scientifically justified and do not reduce the animal care aspect of things from a scientific standpoint. But additionally, just some of these emerging areas, I think it's important to be aware of because there may be B2B marketing decisions that are made that we're trying to stay out ahead of, frankly, with that customer outreach relationship. But obviously the concerns continually around animal abuse, we need to get obviously that's intolerable. We want to make sure that we're not just not abusing animals, but actually enhancing the care on the farm. Overarching, there's a lot of research going on in the calf care space, what is best for the animal itself, as well as that general freedom of movement. I think, if we look at our other barnyard groups, pigs and chickens in particular, a lot of the decisions to move away from restrictive type of movement or restrictions of movement, given a housing system, certainly give us a sense of pause within our industry. We've worked with a lot of working groups to make sure that where our standards align do match up with science, but those are our key areas that I think we're just going to continue to keep a pulse on, have conversations with. And that's the importance of having, again, that customer outreach team and those relationships with the top 25 to 50 dairy organizations, that they feel that they have a contact within the dairy industry that can provide insights, give them the full scope of the situation and help them make the most beneficial decision for both their market, but also who are their suppliers as well. Bev, any others that maybe we haven't hit on here?
I don't think, what I would add is that, we are a small team. The farm team is small, but we do have 2 staff that are wholly dedicated, plus ones that are wholly dedicated to the customer outreach piece. And really why that's such an important part of this program and initiative is so that we can build relationships with those dairy customers. So, when a dairy customer has questions or concerns, or maybe they're approached by someone who is anti-agriculture, anti-animal production, maybe just a consumer who is genuinely curious, we can be there to answer their questions and provide them with the information that science-based information or production information, or just what is common practice within the industry, and maybe some of that justification of why the shift hasn't been made that they're hearing can be made, put some real world into what they're hearing. But that's just another important, and we know within the last couple of years, just even looking at this list, as some of those issues have come up and been key concerns for our dairy customers, we're able to build those relationships and answer those questions about what the industry is doing and what direction it's going. So really, we've shared a lot of information today. Clearly, it's not everything. It's not fully exhaustive of what is made up of the farm program. But going forward, if a producer has questions about the program, expectations, assistance in meeting the standards, or even maybe some clarification about some of the standards, where can they find out more information, and who should be their resource for that?
The most important areas for finding information about the farm program, one is your farm program evaluator. Overwhelmingly, the majority of our evaluators are cooperative or processor staff. Again, if maybe there's been some change in that role over time, make sure you know who your most current evaluator is. It may not be the same person from the previous version. There may have been some shifts. So make sure you understand and know who those folks are. Speaking on their behalf, I know that they would be more than happy to communicate and help with any prep work before an evaluation takes place. That's actually part of their training. We want them to work with the farms ahead of time before an evaluation takes place. We want to set everyone up to succeed through this evaluation structure and really leave no stone unturned, no surprises when the evaluation is happening. So first and foremost, really get to know your farm program evaluator. If you're not sure of who that person is, again, feel free to reach out to your cooperative or processor or reach out to us as the farm program, and we can get you in touch with the right person. And recognizing that not everybody has access to good internet. Bev is probably the biggest testament to that. But we do have a plethora of resources and information on nationaldairyfarm.com. We have really bolstered, I think, over the past few years, the amount of information that's there. We're really trying to be as transparent and open as possible about what the expectations are of the program, what our standards are, and how to achieve those if they are areas for continuous improvement. So the website is nationaldairyfarm.com. If you don't have great access to the internet or don't have internet at all, I think that's still a reasonable assumption. We do produce everything in hard copy as well. We're happy, again, to have those conversations of what's available, but also your farm evaluator will also have that list of resources and suites of materials for satisfying standards that are available to you in a hard copy form. We've also partnered with a variety of different organizations, companies, state, local levels to provide this information out as well. And so if you're interested or are looking for a resource and may not see it right out of the gate, one, if it doesn't exist and you have an idea, please let us know. If it's working for your dairy, it's likely could work for others, or an adaptation of it working for others. And certainly if you've got feedback on the resources that we've created, we work through that same kind of governance process to make sure that we kind of hit the big items, the big ticket items in our resources and suite of materials, but there may be something missing. Again, we are far from perfect. We don't have it all figured out. So please feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to get those over to you. So, and always, again, Bev, again, will share the information here at the end, but if you have an email, feel free to email us at dairyfarm@nmpf.org, or feel free to call the NMPF office and they will get you in touch with us to answer any questions directly in a verbal conversation.
Thanks, Emily. And I do think that we can possibly squeeze in one question. We're a little over time, but we'll squeeze in one. We talk a lot about being science-based. Can you speak a little bit about what that means in particular, and what are the organizations that we look to? How do we become science-based? What do we determine? Research associations, that type of thing.
Yeah, I think our core group of the science and research is the journal articles, or the Journal of Dairy Science, Journal of Animal Science, those of the like that we really heavily rely on. And then in turn, a lot of those individuals that are doing that research themselves. I think we've found new and innovative folks that we've maybe not thought to work with previously that have authored papers recently that we're engaging with further. But obviously a key component to good animal care is good animal health, and that means that we've got to work with our veterinarian associations as well. So utilizing their suite and resources of expertise in their respective organizations, the Association of Bovine Practitioners, AABP, the Veterinary Medical Association, AVMA, and others of the like, are really key to that science base. And additionally, we look not only at kind of that hard science, but also utilize, particularly in those emerging issues arena, what the social science is also saying. Again, that may not be a place where the farm program can address at this point in time, but understanding that social science aspect will, again, help to hopefully position the industry to skate where the puck's going to be, and anticipate where we may need to dedicate some of that more, I would say, more technical science and research on farm practices to be applicable. We also, routinely provide letters of support for various on-farm management practice research that is practical and science-based, so that we have something to point to. Truly, sometimes science isn't fast enough, and that's where sometimes there is that feeling that the farm program, particularly maybe from the customer or the consumer realm, that we're not addressing things in a fast enough fashion. But we do kind of, one of our guardrails, our guiding principles is to maintain that science and research based on farm management practices, and utilize that science as available to us. We don't want to make a decision or write a standard that may inadvertently impact animal care or welfare in a negative sense. And so we really have to wait until kind of that body of work is completed in order to make sure that we can have a justifiable standard set in that scientific arena.
Thanks, Emily. And I realize that we have gone over time a little bit, and so just want to let you folks know, if you have additional questions that we haven't covered in today's discussion, there's our contact information there. I know we have a few folks that have joined us that are outside of the producer community, the farmer community. So if you'd like to reach out there at that dairyfarm@nmpf.org inbox, we can connect you with the customer outreach folks that are on our team as well. Just a reminder that our next quick combos will be about workforce development, our newest farm program area, and that will be on the 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So be sure to tune into that. And thank you guys for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody.